Hold up.
That uniform real, or are you just coming from a costume party?
My name is Senior Chief Darnell Carter, United States Navy. I'm traveling under official orders to Washington. I'm happy to show.
I don't care who you are. Drop the bag. Hands behind your back. Now don't make me ask twice.
I'm complying, Sergeant, but I need to know.
At 7:14 a.m., inside Charlotte Douglas International Airport, Senior Chief Darnell Carter walked through the main terminal in full Navy dress whites. He was 43 years old, broad-shouldered, steady on his feet, and carried himself the way only men with more than 2 decades in special operations do. Quiet, controlled, aware of everything. His garment bag hung over his left shoulder. A leather folder with official travel orders was tucked under his right arm. He was heading to Washington, D.C., where in less than 24 hours he would stand before a room of flag officers and receive the Navy Distinguished Service Medal, one of the highest non-combat honors the service could give. His record spoke for itself. 6 combat deployments, a Purple Heart earned in a firefight most Americans would never hear about, a Bronze Star with Valor for actions classified above his own pay grade.
He had spent the better part of his adult life in places the government didn't acknowledge, doing work that kept people safe while they slept. He had bled for his country more times than most people had filed taxes. That morning, he was just a man catching a connecting flight. His uniform was spotless, his ribbons were earned, his orders were signed, and none of it would matter to the officer watching him from across the terminal. Sergeant Kyle Brannigan had been with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Airport Police for 18 years. He was 44, stocky, with a jaw that always seemed clenched and a posture that dared people to test him. On paper, he was a senior officer with commendations and a clean disciplinary record. Off paper, the picture looked very different. Over the past 14 years, 31 complaints had been filed against Brannigan. Excessive force, racial profiling, verbal intimidation, targeting black and brown travelers for stops that had no legal basis. Every single complaint had been reviewed internally and dismissed. Misunderstanding, inconclusive, unfounded. The language changed, but the outcome never did. 2 officers had previously requested transfers after working alongside him. One had filed a written statement with Human Resources saying Brannigan regularly referred to black passengers as frequent flyers, a term he used with a smirk that made its meaning impossible to miss. Nothing came of it. His partner that morning was Officer Ryan Sutter, 28, 3 years on the job. Sutter was quiet, agreeable, and had never once pushed back on anything Brannigan said or did. He followed orders. He watched. He said nothing. That combination made him exactly the kind of partner Brannigan preferred. Brannigan stood near the TSA checkpoint, coffee in hand, scanning the early morning crowd the way he always did. Not looking for threats, looking for targets. And when his eyes landed on a black man in dress whites walking through his terminal, his expression shifted. He set down the coffee, he straightened his belt, and he started walking. In the 10 minutes before Brannigan moved, at least a dozen travelers had passed through his line of sight. 3 were in military uniform. 2 were white Marines in service Charlies. 1 was a white Army captain in dress greens. Brannigan didn't glance at any of them, didn't shift his weight, didn't reach for his radio. But when Darnell Carter walked past the coffee kiosk in dress whites, ribbons catching the overhead light, Brannigan stepped directly into his path. "Hold up! Where'd you get that uniform?" Carter stopped. His expression stayed neutral. The question registered, but his training held. He kept his hands visible, one on the garment bag strap, the other at his side. "I'm Senior Chief Darnell Carter, United States Navy. I'm on official travel." Brannigan's eyes moved slowly over the ribbons, the rank insignia, the creased white fabric. His lip curled slightly. "Yeah? You got ID for that?" Carter nodded. "Inside pocket. I'll get it for you. Keep your hands where I can see them." Carter didn't move. Brannigan leaned in closer than necessary. "A lot of guys like you buy this stuff online. Ribbons, patches, all of it. You'd be surprised how many people walk through here playing pretend." Carter's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. "I have my military ID and sealed travel orders. You're welcome to verify both." Brannigan didn't reach for them, didn't acknowledge the offer. Sutter moved to Carter's right side, blocking the path forward. The two officers now had him boxed in. Travelers slowed. A woman with a rolling bag glanced over. A gate agent at the nearest counter looked up. Carter stood still between them, hands open, posture straight, watching Brannigan's eyes and recognizing something he had seen before in men who had already decided what they were going to do before the conversation started. Brannigan's voice dropped. "Put the bag down. Turn around." Carter lowered the garment bag to the floor and turned slowly, placing his hands behind his back, palms open. "What am I being detained for?" "Shut your mouth." Carter kept his tone measured. "I'm complying with your instructions. I have a right to know why I'm being stopped." Brannigan grabbed Carter's left wrist and wrenched it upward at an angle that forced his shoulder to rotate unnaturally. Carter's breath caught, but he didn't pull away. "I am not resisting," he said clearly, loud enough for anyone within 20 feet to hear. Brannigan yanked harder. "Stop resisting." Carter's body pitched forward from the force. Before he could correct his balance, Brannigan drove him face first into the terminal floor. The sound was immediate and sickening, a hard crack of bone and flesh against polished tile that echoed across the concourse. Sutter dropped a knee onto Carter's upper back without hesitation. Carter's metals ground against the floor. His lips split on impact. A line of blood ran onto the white fabric of his uniform and pooled against the tile. He didn't move, didn't struggle, didn't raise his voice. "I am Senior Chief Darnell Carter," he said through clenched teeth, one cheek pressed flat to the ground. "I am not resisting." Around them, the terminal erupted. A woman screamed. A child near the gate started crying. A businessman dropped his briefcase and pulled out his phone. Within seconds, at least 6 cameras were recording from different angles. And on Brannigan's chest, the red light of his Bodycam blinked steadily, capturing everything he had just done to a man who had done nothing at all. A man in a faded Marine Corps cap pushed through the gathering crowd. He was in his late 60s, tall, with the kind of posture that never fully leaves a person who served. He took one look at Carter on the floor, the dress whites, the ribbons, the blood, and his voice cut through the noise like a command. "That man is a senior chief. You can see his rank from here. What the hell are you doing?" Brannigan didn't look up. "Sir, step back or you'll be next." The Marine held his ground. "I'm a retired colonel, United States Marine Corps. That man is in uniform with rank and ribbons you clearly don't understand. You're assaulting a service member." Brannigan finally looked at him. "I don't care if he's the Secretary of Defense. Back up. Now." Sutter glanced at the colonel, then at the growing crowd, then at the phones. His knee stayed on Carter's back, but his face had changed. Something behind his eyes was catching up to what his body was still doing. A flight attendant near the gate picked up an internal phone and called airport operations. Her voice was tight. "There's an officer on the floor of Concourse C with a man in a Navy uniform pinned down. There's blood. People are recording. You need to send someone now." A teenage girl sitting cross-legged at a charging station had her phone angled low, capturing everything. A woman in scrubs was live streaming to Facebook, narrating under her breath. A man in a business suit stood motionless, phone raised, jaw open. Carter lay still through all of it. His breathing was controlled. His hands didn't move. His training had taken over completely, the same way it had in rooms and corridors and rooftops in countries most of these people would never visit. He spoke once more, his voice steady despite the blood on his lips. "I am not resisting. I am an active-duty Navy SEAL. You are being recorded." Brannigan leaned down, close enough that his Bodycam picked up every syllable. "I don't care what you call yourself. You're nothing right now." Carter was pulled to his feet by the cuffs, the metal biting into his wrists as Brannigan hauled him upward without warning. His shoulder screamed from the earlier wrench. Blood had dried along his chin and soaked into the collar of his dress whites. The garment bag and leather folder lay on the terminal floor where he'd dropped them. No one picked them up. Brannigan and Sutter walked him down a side corridor, past a maintenance door, and into a windowless security room with a metal table, 2 chairs, and a single overhead light. Brannigan shoved him into a chair and cuffed his right wrist to a steel loop bolted to the table. Carter looked at him. "I need medical attention. My lip is split and my shoulder may be dislocated." "You're fine," Brannigan said. Carter kept his voice level. "I'm requesting medical assistance. I have a right to that." Brannigan leaned against the doorframe. "You've got a right to sit there and wait until I figure out what to do with you." He walked out. Sutter followed. The door closed. Carter sat alone in that room for over 2 hours. No water, no medical attention, no phone call, no explanation of charges. His blood dried brown against white fabric. His shoulder throbbed with every breath. The overhead camera in the corner of the ceiling recorded everything. The stillness, the silence, the patience of a man who had survived things these officers couldn't imagine, now cuffed to a table in his own country. Halfway through the first hour, Brannigan's voice drifted in from the hallway. The ceiling mic caught it with perfect clarity. "Another one playing dress-up. They all do it. Fake rank, fake medals, fake everything." A colleague standing near him shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Nobody ever did. That was how it worked. That was how it had always worked. Until now. The door to the holding room opened at 9:41 a.m. The woman who stepped through was not a police officer. Patricia Vance was the airport's operations director, a civilian administrator who had run Charlotte Douglas for 11 years and answered directly to the aviation department and the city. She had been pulled out of a morning briefing by a staff member who told her there was a situation in Concourse C involving a man in a military uniform, blood on the floor, and passengers recording on their phones. She walked into the room and stopped. Carter sat upright in the chair, wrist cuffed to the table, dried blood along his chin and collar, his dress whites stained and scuffed. His posture was still straight. His eyes were clear. He looked at her the way a man looks at someone when he's been waiting a long time for anyone with authority to walk through the door. Vance turned to Brannigan, who had followed her in. "Explain this." Brannigan crossed his arms. Suspicious individual in a military uniform. Possible stolen valor. He refused to comply with a lawful stop. Vance looked back at Carter. "Is that accurate?" "No, ma'am," Carter said. "I identified myself. I offered my military ID and travel orders. I complied with every instruction. I was never shown a reason for the stop. I asked for medical attention and was denied. I've been cuffed to this table for over 2 hours. Vance held out her hand toward Brannigan. "Give me his identification." Brannigan hesitated. "Now, Sergeant." He reached into a plastic bin on the counter and handed over Carter's military ID and the leather folder containing his orders. Vance opened the ID first. The photo matched. The name read Carter Darnell A. Rank, Senior Chief Petty Officer. She unfolded the orders. Official travel, ceremony in Washington, signed by a Rear Admiral. She closed the folder and looked at Brannigan with an expression that made Sutter take a half step back. "This man is an active-duty Navy SEAL with orders signed by a flag officer. Uncuff him immediately." Brannigan didn't move. "I haven't finished processing him." "You're finished," Vance said. "Uncuff him now, or I'm calling the Federal Air Marshal Office and your chief simultaneously." Sutter stepped forward without waiting and unlocked the cuff. Carter flexed his wrist slowly. The skin beneath was raw and red. Vance walked Carter to a private office down the hall, closed the door, and handed him a bottle of water. Then she picked up the phone. Her first call went to Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado. She identified herself, described the situation, and read Carter's service number directly from his ID. The duty officer on the other end asked her to repeat the details. She did. The line went quiet for 4 seconds. Then the duty officer said, "Hold, please," and transferred her to the command's legal office. Within 30 minutes, NCIS had opened a case file. Within 45, the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General had been notified. Within an hour, a Pentagon liaison was on a direct call with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Airport Police Chief Ronald Durbin. The language was not diplomatic. "You have an active-duty Navy SEAL who was assaulted, racially profiled, denied medical attention, and held without cause for over 2 hours by your officers. This is now a federal matter. Preserve all footage immediately. No officer involved in this incident speaks to anyone outside your department without federal authorization. Durbin sat behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear, staring at the wall. He had run the department for 9 years. He had seen complaints come and go. He had signed off on dismissals that kept officers like Brannigan in uniform because the alternative was paperwork, union battles, and political noise. But this was not a complaint from a passenger who would eventually give up. This was the Pentagon, and the Pentagon did not give up. Durbin called Brannigan into his office that afternoon. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. "Badge and weapon," Durbin said, "on my desk before end of shift." Brannigan stared at him. "Chief, I was doing my job." Durbin didn't blink. Your job just became a federal investigation. Badge, weapon, now. For the first time in 18 years, Kyle Brannigan unclipped his badge, set it on the desk, and walked out of the building without it. The evidence unit pulled the footage that same evening. Brannigan's body cam, Sutter's body cam. 6 terminal security cameras covering Concourse C from different angles. The holding room ceiling